Well, good morning, everybody. Yes, it's another good day, start of a good day. And I have an interesting session, hopefully, for you today. And it starts where I leave off in McCall. Good year in McCall, as I indicated to you last time. I'm now 14 years old, and I'm starting school down in Boise, Idaho, at the junior high school. They have the 7th and 8th grades in junior high, and then you move to 9th grade through the 12th in high school. And so here I am, 14 years old. What do I try to do? Move into another school, my third one in 3 years. And I decided I'm going to try out for a student body office, junior high school. So I go through the procedures that are required there, learn a bit about running for office. And of course, I'm not known by anybody in Boise. It's my first day in the school. I still don't know anybody. But I choose to run for office. Well, I get to give my little speech in the assembly, in the school assembly, about who I am and what I am. And I don't win, which shouldn't be a surprise because nobody knows me. Well, junior high is not bad. That year is not a bad year for me, 8th grade. I started in band, junior high school band. I play the baritone horn. No vivid memories of it, but it was a good experience. It was probably one of the better experiences that I had up to that point. That was really the first time I got into playing in a band. I don't think I'd practiced much on my baritone horn before. Some of you may not know what a baritone horn is. It's also called a euphonium, and it looks like a big bass, but it's smaller. And then my mother has found a job. She completed her schooling. She is earning money now. We get an apartment over on Hayes Street in Boise, 6th and Hayes, as I recall, 5th and Hayes. And life is not bad. Unfortunately, I'm a little slow in making friends. I'm not sure why that is. So I attempt to become friends with my brother Bob, who's been in Boise for a year, and he's met a group of young fellows, and they have good times together. And somehow I don't quite fit in. They have a kind of a tough time accepting the older brother into their younger group, by about a year and a half younger. So I'm fairly solitary. And then I move on to high school, 9th grade in high school. And here things begin to go downhill. And how? Well, I never realized it at the time, but in this particular high school in Boise at this time, it's during the war, young guys there, you walk down the halls, and the bigger guys, football players, athletes, and it's not the girls, not the women, but they have a custom of hitting you on the arm as you pass by in the hall. And they hit the guys that are smaller than themselves. They seldom ever hit the guys that are bigger than themselves. And so, unfortunately, but not untypically, it's not typical, but it's at the kind of the end of the spectrum of growth for a boy, I found out later on. I am only 5'2" and weigh 110 pounds, and in my junior year in high school, I'm still that size. So the 9th, 10th, and 11th grades in that high school, as I walked down the halls between classes, go by a boy, hits you right on the shoulder. Well, I never realized until just the other night when I was telling Mary Jo about that custom. I don't think I'd ever described it before, how angry I felt about these big guys and the middle-sized guys pounding on my shoulder in the hallways. So that was going on. Size, reactions of the other kids to me, and with each blow, I think now, it's why I started out with the title that I have for this segment of my life, Becoming a Nobody. I didn't stand out in any area. Athletics I couldn't engage in because I was too small. I tested out here. I went into a school play, had a minor part. It was interesting, and I learned some good things in there about positioning myself, about speaking out, about articulating. I learned those things. It wasn't in class. It was in that school play. But the good part of my life, undoubtedly the best part of my high school life, was school band. I had an excellent band leader by the name of Ralph Dungan. He exacted from us the best. If we weren't right on tune, if we weren't right in with the others, if we didn't come in right on target, right at the moment we should, he stopped it. We'd redo it until we had it. When we marched as a high school band in the parades through the city of Boise, we were sharp every turn, together. It was a team. And the music, great music, marches, and I was good. I was becoming good in that. And he congratulated me at a number of times. I knew I was doing well. Everything else about me was falling down. What was going on in school, I became disinterested in classes, began to sink in my grades. By the time I had completed my work at that high school, I was in the lower 1/3 of my graduating class academically. But band, it was it. And also at this time, a big change comes into our lives as a family. My mother remarries. Good man, Harold Howell, who has lost his wife, giving birth to their 4th child 4 years before. And he meets my mother, and they get married. I don't know the intricacies, but they choose to get married, and they have 2 children older than me. Rosemary, who's about 18 at this time, Harold Jr., who's about 16, Monty, who's about the same age as my brother Bob, a year and a half younger, and Varna, who's the youngest, who's about 4 years old when they get married and when I first know her. But suddenly, I have gone from being the oldest boy in a family of children of 2, Bob and I, to the middle of a family of 6. And I don't realize what the impact of that is. Sociologically, socially, at the time I had no awareness. But all of a sudden, I was kind of lost. And I was becoming more rebellious with what was going on in school. I was not obeying. I was flippant, mouthy. And of course, when you start doing that, people don't like it, and they try to stop you, or get you to stop. And so then you get into these angry shouting matches. And the only thing that's keeping me in school really at this point is Ralph Dungan and the school band. And so at the start of the senior year, in September 1944, I come to school and find out the worst news of all. My band leader has been drafted into the U.S. Army and is leaving, and there's a substitute who's coming in to take his place. Well, the substitute may have been just someone that was quickly obtained to fill in for the band leader, who probably didn't know he was being drafted until a week or two before it happened. But when I went to school and found out that Ralph Dungan would no longer be the band leader, I just went down. And then I gave the fellow a chance who came in. But it wasn't, he didn't know music. He didn't have the ability to relate to the students in the class. He didn't demand excellence. And finally one day in frustration, I stood up and said, I don't like band anymore. And I walked out. I didn't just walk out of that class. I walked out of high school. I dropped out. I dropped out of home. I left home. Age 16. No, it's just before I was 16. Still 15, going into my senior year. And where did I go? California. Because my brother Bob had some friends who had moved down there. And somehow, I don't remember the details, I made arrangements to live with that family. There were several boys in the family, 3 I think. And we occupied had our beds in their garage there in Oakland, California, up in the Diamond area. Significant area for me. D-I-M-O-N-D. And I chose to go to school, enrolled in Fremont High School. And it was kind of a blob. It was nothing. I don't recall virtually anything about it. I didn't do any studying. It was just there. It was lovely in California in October and November, up in Oakland, compared to Idaho at that time of the year. But something began to happen. All this time I had come to feel like I was a nobody. So how could I be a somebody? Well, at that time in high school, if you had an automobile, you were somebody. I mean, that was right the epitome of what you could be in high school, to have a car to drive. So what I needed, obviously, was a car in my thinking at the time, and I would be somebody. Well, I didn't have any money. And one night, lying in bed, I remember where my head was, the boys began to talk. 2 of them worked at a store, a Lucky store there in Oakland, in the Diamond area. And they began to talk about how easy it would be to steal money from this store. Because when they closed the store at night, they took all the money and put it in a safe down by the cash register, locked it with a key, and then stuck the key up in their cash register and didn't shut the cash register drawer. They just left it open till the next morning. Money. And then they talked about how all you'd have to do was to go into the store before they closed, go to the back room, make sure there's nobody back there, which typically there wasn't, hide yourself until the store closed. And the doors to the back doors, where you could get out, you could push open. You didn't need a key, just push them open, and they would lock when they were shut from the outside. Money, car, cash register, safe, key. Well, that worked around in my mind till one evening, not very long. I'd been probably in Oakland about 2 months, and I decided to do what they had said, what they had talked about. And I went down, went in the front of the store, walked to the back of the store, looked around, nobody back there. Went to where they kept all the boxes, empty boxes piled up. Got myself in there, covered myself with boxes, waited until the store was quiet and everybody had left. Lights had been turned out. Got out, crawled up through the store to the cash registers, which were near the windows to the street, kept down low, reached up into the cash register, found the key, took the key, put it down the safe. Lights from the street made it possible to see what I was doing. And the key fit, opened it up. There was the money, checks, currency, bills. Got a paper bag right off the side from where the cashier would normally stand, bagger. Took it all and put it in the bag. Shut the safe door on the floor there. Locked the key. Wiped off the fingerprints to the key. And got it back in the cash register in the exact place where it had been before. Went out through the back door. Sure enough, it opened by pushing. Didn't leave my fingerprints, just pushed with my heels of my hand. I'd read a lot of detective books, seen a few movies about how to be a criminal, I guess, a crook, thief, and walked home to the home where I was staying. And then, I can't remember that night or the next day, I think it was the next day, down the basement of the home. It was unfinished. It really wasn't the basement, it was under the house. And counted the money and got rid of the checks. I can't remember, either burned them up or tore them up and got rid of them. I can't remember how that was. And several days later, I left Oakland and took a bus to Seattle, Washington. And the amount of money, in today's money, it would be about $15,000. The money at that time was about $1,500. Money today is worth 1/10 of what it was in 1944. The car, I was too scared of what people would ask me when I went in to buy a car and have all this, have it not in a check. I wasn't about to open a bank account. I try to account for the money I was going to put in. I never bought the car. I just spent it. Lived in a hotel for about 3 or 4 months. Of course, ate in restaurants. Went bowling. I didn't smoke or drink at that time, so didn't have any bad habits. Didn't have any friends. And I'll show you a picture of me walking down the street, probably at the end of this, it's 17 years, no, just about 17 years of age at that time. And not a friend, just alone, and spending the money. Well, by January, February, money was gone. So I go back to Boise and tell my mother I want to enlist in the Navy. And I'm only 17, so I need her permission before I can go in the service. She's rather reluctant, but not exceedingly happy to see me back. No, I shouldn't say that. I really don't know what her feelings were. I never talked to her about that. I'm just assuming. At any rate, she gives me permission to join the Navy, and I join. And so now I'm in the Navy. I'm 17 years old. March 1945, I join up. War's still on. I go through sonar school. Well, first basic training, then sonar school. Point Loma and San Diego. And then the war ends, August 1945. I'm still in that school at that time. And I realize I'm going to be sent overseas probably to relieve someone who spent 2 or 3 years over there. So I ask to be sent overseas, and I'm sent. I go overseas and arrive in Thanksgiving, just after Thanksgiving, 1945. And I have just turned 18 at that time, 18 years old. Over in Tokyo, I still haven't learned to smoke or drink. I still haven't done that. But the Navy provides free cigarettes overseas and free beer to anyone who wants it. I give mine away starting. I don't have anything against drinking, except I've just never started, and it doesn't particularly appeal to me. Same with cigarettes and cigarette smoke. But I decide I'm going to use my own allotment. And so I begin to drink the beer, begin to smoke cigarettes, and finally get to the point where I'm hooked. And I spend 6 months overseas. We go from Japan or from Tokyo down to Wakayama over to the west coast, and the west coast of Japan to Korea, Jinsen, Korea, and then down to Tsingtao, China, and down to Shanghai, China, all on this LST. And I've learned to smoke and drink. Well, I won't go into other details of being in the Navy. I have a picture of my, may or may not give you my ID card when I joined the Navy, and a picture was taken of 3 of us when we were in Honolulu on the way back. And I get back to Boise, and then something very curious happens in Boise. Up to this time, I'm just kind of going along. No ambitions, really, to do anything, to be anything. Just a high school dropout. Well, I decided to go to college, and I go to junior college in Boise. Today it's Boise State University. It's Boise Junior College at that time. And with my GI money, I drink beer. That's where most of it goes. I've become pretty much an alcoholic. Then one day I'm sitting in a drugstore. I'm now 18 going on 19. And I'm sitting in the drugstore, and a police car comes by. Now this is probably the most important event in my young life, the most significant. So I want you to understand exactly how it takes place. I'm sitting in the drugstore on a counter stool. I remember where I was at that counter, where I was sitting, off to the side. And a police car comes by. Now I can't remember whether the lights were on or whether the siren was going, but it was one or the other, going down the street there in Boise, across the street from the Boise Hotel and the drugstore on the corner. And all of a sudden, I feel fear. And the thought, are they coming for me? Now this is 2 years after that event that I described in that lucky store in Oakland, California. I had never felt this fear before, but there I was, fear, heart beginning to race, and then a thought comes, no, it's not a thought. A voice speaks to me in my head, and the voice asks a question, and it says, do you want to live like this for the rest of your life? Feeling fear every time you see a police car, hear a police car, see a policeman? Do you want to live like this? And immediately the response within myself was, no, I don't want to live like this. And then the other voice, oh, what are you going to do about it? Well, what do I have to do about it? You have to make good. What do you mean I have to make good? You need to go make good. And then within myself, yeah, but if I do that, they'll put me in jail. That's $15,000. That's major. That's not minor. You got to make good. This young man, me, 18, 19, had never made a significant, really significant, major important decision in my life up to that point. I was irresponsible. I had no character to speak of. I lied, I cheated, I stole. That was my life. That was me, Wesley Craig, at that point in time. I did something that I had no idea where it came from within me. But I made a decision. And the decision was to go down to Oakland, California, and talk to the people that I'd stolen the money from. So I got off the counter stool, made arrangements,